I wanted to shift gears a little bit in this video from the content I've been making recently to tell you about my experience with this man who was my boss in a job, in a warehouse that really just did not treat people right. And I felt bad for him at the end of the day because there's clearly more going on than what meets the eye. But he was just there to unleash on his employees, really. And he was there to truly just try his best to make everybody feel not so great to be there. And during that time, I just wasn't going to tolerate that kind of treatment. I'm not going to name what company this is. This is a well-known company, I will say that. And as crazy as this sounds, I was excited to work there because from my previous experience, I felt like this was something, this was a product that I used in the past. And this guy, during the interview process, I had no qualms with him whatsoever. And I was like, all right, let's go. The pay was okay. I didn't have really a true grasp of what I would be doing. He hired me for a specific role, and then once I actually got on, he pretty much made me do everything except the role I was hired for. And there was staffing issues, there was other stuff going on, I get it, He has his own deadlines, his own quotas he's got to meet. Okay, all right. But my issue really with this guy was just how I was treated, because I was trying to put a smile on people's face, right? I did my job. But this was like the biggest example of a micromanaging manager that I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's almost as if my positivity and my effort in this role threatened him. That might be jumping to conclusions, I don't necessarily know, but there was a clear lack of faith and conviction in this man, that he was pretty much well known across this entire warehouse as the worst boss ever. I also got rumors that he was hooking up with his assistant, right, who was doing all the paperwork for the warehouse and everything. The real world and these kind of jobs, they're crazy, man, but we all got to make a living somehow. We all have our own things we got to go through to get to that point. But this was not a fun time for me. I lasted for a few months doing that one. The conditions were extremely warm. They were hot. It was a lot of intense manual labor, which, I'm a smaller guy, but I was willing to do it, I'm not opposed to a good workout. I was a sports guy my whole life growing up, so bring it on in that regard. And in the warehouse, it's very interesting when you think about just the collection of employees that you could find in a warehouse. And the more I was talking to my coworkers, the more it taught me about just the real world and the struggles that these people are facing. And a lot of these people were also pretty positive given the circumstances, they were willing to chat with me, they were hardworking. Did they want the check? Absolutely they wanted the check, right? But they didn't let life bring them down in that way. And not to get too sidetracked, but I think the more you rise in those management positions that have been structured by corporate America, it gets increasingly difficult for a lot of these managers to maintain their peace. And it's not always worth the extra money that you might be making to be in one of those positions, in my opinion. If you're in a position now where you are really happy with what you're doing, why would you take the promotion, take on, let's say, 2 to 4 times the workload, and then ultimately only get a 20% raise, maybe, if you're lucky? That's not for me. that's personally not for me. But in this warehouse, there's people, you know, that have been really frowned upon from a lot of other jobs because of their appearance, and that doesn't change the quality of who they are based on their conversations with me. I'll talk to anybody. I will literally talk to anybody at the end of the day. I will get to know any single person. And there is people there that were just looking to support their kids. You know, maybe they had like 3 or 4 kids, and this warehouse was paying more than any other opportunity they can get, like coming out of high school, and they never went to college, so they'd be in like their mid-20s, late 20s with a couple kids, whatever. So I have a lot of respect for that. And it's just really tough right now for a lot of people to get by. And this was also like a year plus ago, guys. So, I mean, you know the economy numbers by now. I don't really have to dissect it too much. So what ended up happening at this warehouse is I kind of just hit my point one day where I was like, all right, like, listen, man, we need to talk. Just like, I really don't appreciate what you're doing. I've been trying my best. I don't know why you're singling me out. I really have no idea. And I told him, I hope you find your peace. I hope it all goes well for you, but I just cannot do this anymore with this kind of treatment. And he was like, giving me this spiel like, okay, well, do you want to think about it for a few days? And in the warehouse, I was capable of the work, like I've been saying, but just something in my gut told me just to get out of there. And then, right after our talk, it was honestly crazy how this happened. He took everybody out of the warehouse for like a team meeting and basically told everyone that the company was going to be like restructuring. And I was like, that's all I need to hear, man. You know, like, you're already starting to cut my hours. You're already treating my coworkers and myself really not well. And I'm not willing to wait out your inevitable firing from your clear substance issues just to keep this job that it's okay pay, in my opinion, for a job, right? But it's not like life-changing money or anything along those lines. But it was a very humbling experience. And I'm gonna wrap this up here in a second just by saying, like, I think it all circles back to get to know people. Everybody's in a different situation. You don't really know what people are going through. I tried to be polite to him. I really, really did. But sometimes you just can't break through to people. Sometimes you just have to let them figure it out on their own. And I do hope he found his peace at this point. You know, I forgive him for how I was treated. And I hope their company didn't go under. I haven't been keeping tabs on it, but will I ever work in a warehouse again? The plan is no. The plan is no, but I'm gonna take my shot in life. I'm gonna keep putting up shots. And yeah, if all else fails, I'm willing to put in the hard work in that regard. But if any of you have worked in a warehouse in the past, feel free to let me know your experience. I don't want to say it was traumatizing, but man, oh man, I really wish that guy had his shit together. You know, I just really wish he did. But all right, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Plenty more content coming in the following week. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe if you want more stories like this. Take care.